A young girl turns up at my table and sits down and proudly introduces herself as Janet from the local newspaper. She said, "You know what, I'm only 16 years old and this is the very first time the boss has ever sent me out to get a story. And I am really determined to get a great story. But you know what confuses me? I've sat here all day and all I've heard is positive things. I'm a newspaper cadet. We have been trained in the belief that if it bleeds, it leads. I'm looking for negative stuff. That's what sells newspapers." She started the lectures on. But you know what? She was only 16, but smarter than all of us put together. She was determined. So what did she do? She just sat with us for a couple of hours and kept filling our glasses, and filling our glasses, and filling our glasses. And slowly but surely we started to move into a total state of drunkenness and oblivion. And that gave her a chance. And I can still vividly remember her peppering me with questions. And she'd taken a new tack. She'd said, "And what do you think of Balingup?" Well, I come from Balingup. It's my hometown. That community reinvented itself as a dairy town into an amazing tourism town. "What do you think of Pemberton?" Well, that was a timber town. It's also become an amazing kind of like fine woodcraft centre. And she says to me, "What do you think of Donnybrook?" Now, I come from Balingup. Donnybrook's 30 kilometres away. We hate people in Donnybrook. Because of a grand final we lost in 1972. We were forced into council amalgamation with Donnybrook. We've never got over it. And so I immediately said, Donnybrook would have to be the ugliest, most boring and laziest town we actually have kind of like in the state. But don't write about that. Write about all the fantastic towns that we've been talking about today. Well, at 6 o'clock the next morning, I realised she did not follow my advice because the mayor of Donnybrook rings me. And his opening words were, "You are an arsehole." And, it was just, that was the nicest thing he had to say in the conversation. He just then went berserk, screaming at the phone about the damage I've done to the reputation of the town, because there on the front page of the state's newspaper is me calling Donnybrook not just ugly, but the ugliest town we have in Australia. And boy, was he furious. But come about 4:30 in the afternoon, I get a second phone call. And this one is actually from the President of the Chamber of Commerce in Donnybrook. And her opening words is, "This is the best thing that's ever happened in the town. We've never seen so many visitors. People are flooding into Donnybrook to kind of like see the ugly town. You know what? We actually have at last found our competitive advantage. We're going to become the ugly town. We're going to really promote it." People seem to be really caught up with it. Particularly Kiwis seem to be driving into the place and just loving it. And we're actually starting to have a bit of fun. And then they say, "You know what? We're going to actually make money out of it in part of our promotion." So they started producing all of these t-shirts. "If you think I'm ugly, you should see Donnybrook." I thought that was fine until they came out with another edition that said, "If you think Donnybrook's ugly, you should see Peter Kenyon." And then this woman, the President of the Chamber of Commerce, she was an ultimate what I call opportunist. She was someone who really seized on the moment to kind of like do something. And she said, "You know what, you may have been drunk when you made these comments, but we reckon you owe it to us to turn up in the town and defend these comments at a public meeting." And so that night, she turned this wild meeting into a conversation where people started to share what would they do with all of these amazing assets. And during the remainder of that night, over 400 ideas were generated amongst that audience about what Donnybrook could do. For example, it was the apple centre of Western Australia. It's famous because the Granny Smith apple comes. But all they'd done was put up plastic light shades looking like apples. Their apple festival had ceased operating at least a decade ago. And that very night, a working group were formed on the floor of that meeting to reinstigate the Apple Festival, which has gone on now to become one of the top agricultural festivals in Western Australia. There was a guy turned up that night and said, "You know how much surplus apples we have here in Donnybrook? How many just go into the ground? You know what? We need to start to get into value adding all of this stuff." And that night he proposed the whole idea of an apple cider factory. And today, that factory employs 22 people in the town. It became a reality in the coming months. People said, you know what, currently people accelerate through our main street rather than slow down and stop because it's so ugly, but it doesn't need to be like that. And that night a group were formed to start to really reintroduce colour and all these flowering apple trees, and today, I need to say, it probably is one of the best main streets. In the coming 12 months, that community spent over $2 million focused on doing up their main streets and a whole pile of their heritage buildings that up to that time were actually just kind of like left in terms of galvanised iron. And we've been thinking about what is it we can get people to do to stop. And he said, we've come up with an idea that we want to put to the community and we want you to get behind it. We want to create Australia's biggest free kids playground. It's floodlit at 9, it's open 24 hours a day, and now Donnybrook has become the major place you stop with your kids. Days I've gone through, I've seen, you know, over 100 families just kind of like utilising this particular asset. And there's been a flow on, obviously, then to the businesses in the main street. Now, here in New Zealand, how many people have been to Bulls lately? Oh, 1 or 2. How many people know the story of Bulls and what they've done? I don't know why, but, you know, it's not the best location of any town in New Zealand. It sits at the intersection of Highway 1 and Highway 3. And yet, people want to accelerate through that town rather than slow down, stop and get out and spend in local businesses. You know, the half of the main street, the shops are empty. What is it we can actually do? It was again one of those cold, wet nights, and there were a mere 24 people turned up. And as I love to get people engaged, and because the numbers were small, we've got everyone to introduce themselves. And I'll never forget, there was a guy there called Bill. And Bill proudly got up and said, I'm Bill and I'm 90 years old. There's a bit of a wicked streak in me that loves people to say comments like that. And immediately said, Bill, what's it like to be 90? And he just stared at me and said, well, when you consider the alternative, it ain't bad at all, he said, you know. And then we got everyone to say, what are you passionate about? And Bill said, I'm only passionate about 2 things, model railways and women. But he said, at 90, I'm getting a little bit old for model railways, you know. So I had a sense of humour. Then when we got into talking about, well, what's Bulls got to run with, he said, the name, Bulls. He said, amazing things we could do with that. And people said, like what, Bill? And he said, well, you know what? I reckon we should promote ourselves as the only town in New Zealand where you get milk from bulls. And he came out with all of these silly one-liners. But you know what? He activated the audience. And there was a younger guy in the audience who very much, Peter reminds me of him very much, a very passionate young guy who's wanting to do something with his town. And he said, you know what? Bill's right. I reckon the name is really one of our great advantages. And what I'm suggesting is we become a town like no other. And what I'm really suggesting we do is that we become the unforgettable kind of like town. And what I'm suggesting is that we get every business and every institution in the town to change their name. So today there are now over 270 different renamed businesses and institutions. And you know what? In that town everything is possible. It's an amazing illustration of what a town can actually do. Yep. Now my final story is also from New Zealand. How many people have been to South Invercargill? How many people have been in the last 2 years to South Invercargill? Have you noticed what's been happening? This, for example, was one of the most depressed places I've been to. I visited about 4 years ago and you drove in, the first thing you noticed there was rubbish everywhere. Didn't seem to be a lot of pride in this place. 26 people came together one day for a meeting. And they said, you know what, let's stop waiting for the cavalry to turn up from, you know, the city of Invercargill or from Wellington. If this place is going to change, we who live here need to take responsibility and provide the leadership for the type of changes we want. And that day, those 26 people started to talk about how do we reinvent and really build a South Invercargill that we can all be proud of. And so they created this urban regeneration project, as I said, that they actually called South kind of like Alive. And so you had 8 residents who said, you know what we care most about is all the litter in the streets. It's like driving into Beirut in the middle of the Civil War. We can't feel proud about the place where all we've got is litter scattered everywhere. We need to get rid of it. And so they came up with a campaign that they simply called Zero Rubbish. They said, we want to get rid of it all. How can we do it? And so they came up with a smart idea. They invited families and people in South Invercargill to adopt a street or adopt a park. And within 4 months, they had 135 streets adopted and 8 parks and over 300 volunteers now on a weekly basis keep their street and those parks clean. Then people said, you know, the thing that really depresses us most at South Invercargill is our shopping area. It's our mall. It's pretty awful. And we think we could do something about it. You know, this was a shopping mall where the sign was broken. There were no lines in the car park. 1 set of doors didn't open. There were 11 shops in the shopping centre. Only 6 of them were occupied, 5 were empty. There were only 11 light bulbs working in the shopping centre. There were 9 broken windows. The toilets flooded and didn't function. Not really the type of shopping centre you get proud about. And subsequently, locals didn't gather there. It wasn't the meeting hub place. It wasn't one of those places where people bumped into each other because people did not feel it was proud. But a group said, you know what, why don't we change all of that? So the team that worked on this went and did an audit of that shopping centre, and they came up with a whole pile of things that they wanted the owners of that shopping centre to fix. And they said, we've got this list of repair jobs. We'd love you to do it. And if you do that, in exchange, we'll do this for you. We'll get all the quotes. We'll also instigate a whole hanging basket arrangement around the shopping centre with an automatic reticular watering system. We'll design, commission paint and get other local businesses to fund new seating in the place, and we'll fix and clean the toilets. And you know what? They said, what a deal. Yes, let's go for it. And in a 12-month period, the owners of that shopping centre spent over $250,000 on maintenance jobs that hadn't been done for years. And then people said, you know what, we've worked on the shopping centre, but around it we've got all these fairly grey streets. What is it we can do to start to make our streetscapes more attractive in South Invercargill? And so a pile of them started then to get young people in the schools engaged, running workshops for the local business, and subsequently we have seen these amazing changes happen in terms of the streetscapes of South Invercargill. The shopping centres now are full of shops, the place has become a heart, businesses are thriving, people love being in the shopping centre, and we've done all that together. We want to put another deal to you, and that is we would like a 30-year lease on that block of land, and we're willing to pay you $1 for that 30 years. And the shopping centre owners bought the deal. And so once they got the lease, in came kind of like local businesses, there were busy bees, and they came up with this amazing reinvention. They had to remove 34 tonnes of rubbish before they could start. They had to demolish that kind of like burnt out house. And what have they started to do? They have built a basketball court there for young people. They've built a community garden. They've done an amphitheatre. They've started to develop and build a community gym. It's just amazing. I love the fact that they've done this amphitheatre and they've started to have kind of like concerts there. The very first one, they suddenly realised they forgot to build a stage. So next weekend, more busy bees and started to build the stage and whatever. And then they've developed this amazing community garden, 18 of these great big areas, and each of them sponsored by a different local business, and each of them managed and looked after by a different school or youth group. Now, what difference has it achieved in 2.5 years? Well, I've shown you 60% of the projects they've done. How many volunteer hours? Well, over 10,000 hours of volunteer effort have been contributed by community members. And in terms of generating financial and in-kind support from local businesses, 241,000 has actually been generated. The group itself have had their regular fundraisers and they've raised 20,000. Now, I've just shared with you 3 stories. What do those communities have in common? What is it when you look at them that actually has made all this stuff actually happen? Well, I just want to quickly tell you there's probably 7 or 8 things that I think is important. And the first thing about all 3 of those communities is they actually started with the belief that if we're going to achieve anything, it needs to be an inside job. That kind of like meaningful, lasting change always has to originate from within. And I love what this guy, Ernesto Ceroli, said in his book, the future of every community lies in capturing the passion, the imagination and resources of its people. Not how much money we can get from internal affairs, but what is it we can actually do when we come together. The second thing we've learned from all these communities is you've got to take some risk. I look at the stuff that they've done in South Invercargill. It's amazing. They've reinvented an entire shopping centre. They've built a community park. They've kind of like taken some risk, and I love that quote. The third thing is they understand it's all about engagement. And the problem is that most of our communities in Australia and New Zealand are a bit like a rugby game, where 30,000 people who need the exercise turn up to watch 30 players who don't. The fourth thing about those communities is that they focus on assets and possibilities, not problems and deficiencies. I love walking into the office of South Alive in South Invercargill. They've got a huge sign in their office that simply says, we don't do complaints, only ideas and solutions. The fifth thing is, and I love that quote, they're opportunity obsessive and enterprising by nature. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. Number 6 is they look at everyone in their community, particularly all those people that we love to label, unemployed, disabled, offenders, a whole pile of people we love to put a label on. We've got to see everyone in our community has some contribution. Number 7, they are positive, passionate and hopeful. You know what, we just simply need people to begin to talk up, not talk down. I'm amazed in Australia in particular, we love to whinge about things rather than kind of like begin to do things. And I love that quote, life is different when you focus on the positive. There's more affirmation, more possibility, more hope. And finally, in all 3 of those communities, things have happened because people have simply come together and started to hold hands with each other. We can't on our own. Not one organisation can do things. We need organisations starting to work together. It's what I love about what's happening in Dargaville here with the development group, the business group, the promotions group. And now starting together, how do we create action together? We've all got strengths, we've all got focuses that are slightly different from each other, but you know what? Together we can actually start to do things. This guy invented permaculture. And I love it. He's from the little town of Stanley in Tasmania. And old Bill Mollison once said, I can't save the world on my own, it'll take at least 3 years. And all he was trying to say is, you know what, together we can actually start to make things happen. And the Africans have a wonderful proverb. If you want to go faster, go alone. But if you want to go further, go together. And I suppose that's the purpose of tonight, is really to get people together. And just to look and see this amazing place we live in. I mean, couldn't ask for a better place to run a workshop. We don't need inspiration, just stare out the window. Just look in that direction. I've never known a town that's got a more spectacular river. I've never seen a town that's got some amazing heritage buildings. But the thing I love about Dargaville, wherever I've been in the last 24 hours, I've just run into people who just want to talk the place up. They're passionate. They care about the place. And if we can start to bring all that together, it's amazing about what we can do. So that's the sermon for the night. It's all about communities, places where people get engaged and get involved. And so enough about South Invercargill and Donnybrook and Halls. What we want to focus on tonight is this community, this place called Dargaville, this amazing, stunning place. And I suppose what I'm interested in is now getting a bit of a conversation going around the tables about what you think we can even do more to make this place even better. I mean, this is not a place in trouble. This is a place that's really kicking a lot of goals. But you know what? Everywhere I've gone, I've heard people talk about ideas and things they would love to see to even make it better. And I suppose that's what we want to do tonight.